You guys
So I
got
think the only folks that actually said they won't be able to make it today are Audra and Mark.
she could join us.
Well, I mean, I think we went through all the consensus items from the survey. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's any additional discussion there. Um, but I think I guess we went through it kind of quickly. I don't know if it's worth revisiting or not. But from what I understood and what I saw when I went through it quickly, was that it pretty much was really in sync with the kind of broad recommendations that we had already put pen to paper on.
That was more or less my take on it, and I think we came up with those consensus items last time, and what I
But
think that's where I understood we were.
I think, David, it might be worthwhile for you to go over Mark's email and see if everybody is in agreement with the way he defines the 50-foot separation from inland wetlands.
Well, I think he brought that up in our last meeting. I think he was just
Oh,
clear
he did.
reminding us that we all agreed to that.
Okay.
But basically what Mark said, and I think correctly, I don't know about all of you, but he basically said it's a wetlands or water course. We need the site for that, which we all agree to. But he wanted to remind everybody that in the state of Connecticut, alluvial deposits are defined as wetlands. And that's not really how we handle them in the septic systems. And so just to remind us, be careful of that. Is that everybody agrees?
Yeah, but I think maybe take it a step further. It sounded like he wanted some type of language in there that that basically stated that in some form or fashion that somehow X would be exempt. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
just saying. I think
what he said during the call, if as I understood it, what I thought he said again in that email was it's basically wetlands or water courses excluding or not including sand and gravels, alluvial deposits, all alluvial deposits.
yeah. Let's okay. So with that, again, I've been around attorneys too much when we're doing these regulations. We might have to hone in on alluvial deposits, something it's going to have to be very specific, like because we want that to be bulletproof in terms of what are we talking about, how there's got to be some system that we can cite.
It's in the wetlands. That exact language is what's in the Wetlands Act,
Okay,
I think.
all right. This is again, I'm just spitballing here, and I'm just making sure though that we want to make sure this thing is bulletproof in terms of that we get what we're looking for, and if we want that
Agreed.
exclusion, again, I've been around when we're writing these regulations, the attorneys, and rightfully so, we've got to say what we mean and mean what we say. That's all I'm saying.
Agreed.
So let's make sure we get it right.
Yeah, I think the next step is gonna have to be take our list of consensus items and actually make them read exactly like we want now, right?
You got
Well,
it.
guys,
That's
I
yep.
I mean, it's not our jobs to completely, write the regs word for word here. I think the best thing we could do is, in layman's terms, explain as explicitly as possible what we want, then leave it up to the attorneys to draft it, right? The LCO attorneys to draft it, or sorry, the state agency attorneys. And then obviously there's going to be the comment period for the regs at a later date, and we could always, clarify if need be. But I don't think we want to, get so far in the weeds where we're, dotting I's and crossing T's and making sure that what we think is the exact definition needs to be included. I think we should go as close as we can
Okay. Yeah.
without pulling
Yeah.
whatever hair that might be on other people's heads out.
Yeah. Not mine.
Not mine
So
either.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I
and
don't disagree.
Sonia has her hands up, David. So just put the
Well, one clarification though, I think we need to put exact, as close as we can on paper, exactly what we want. I don't think we're writing the regs, but for instance, we have software tracking program. we need to flesh out that exactly what we all want, right? And
I
then that will
agree.
go.
I agree. Because guys, here's the deal. I mean, ultimately, we want whatever this committee comes up with to be for DPH to take back and implement it. So if what you give us is something that can immediately and easily be transferred in these changes, that's going to expedite the process. So that's what I'm trying to say. And also I want to make sure that our interpretation is going to be the same as yours, like that we implement what you really want. And that's why I'm looking for that level of detail. I appreciate what Jim's saying. I get it. You know, I do my job or do our attorney's job, but I think it would be most helpful and beneficial if we get that level of detail.
Yeah, we need as defined as we can.
Yes.
Sonia?
That's actually what I was going to ask you a question about. So you have wetlands, and we also have in these areas a lot of tear down rebuilds that are built up wetlands. So I just want to make sure, and that would be a B100A. So when you're defining wetlands, is that going to be part of like the technical standards? You have to be a certain distance away, and if it doesn't X, then it cannot be a project that's done.
All right, so I think the context we're dealing with when it comes to wetlands is strictly from a nitrogen evaluation standpoint only. It will not be cited as a setback distance for the system itself, or it's not going to trigger any type of other review other than specifically for the nitrogen. Good point, and I think that's why the way it's written in the regs now is it's specifically it's a means of delineating a nitrogen sensitive area. Specifically that only. Good point, though.
All right, so we want to go over these consensus items one more times. Not any. So we're through. We won't do the survey results. I mean, I guess the review the red line of the DPH regulations. I was not able to redline that document.
Yeah, you know, I think, and you know, I apologize. I just really like looked at the document this morning, and I realized that, you know, I think what we had asked of Peter was that the document be converted to a Word document and then put up on the OneDrive, and it doesn't look. It looks like the PDF was put up, but not the edible. You know, a Word document. So I don't know if we asked for that to happen, and you know, that's our homework after this meeting or not, or if David, you think like walking through um the document together. I mean, it's obviously a 25 page document, right? So it probably makes sense for us to go back at it at a later date. But it's up to you guys. Obviously, David, you're the chair.
I don't know what everybody else thinks. You know, I've been through it multiple times. That's how we ultimately all got together, right? There are certain things in there that we had questions about, maybe is the way to phrase it. And ultimately, I hope our list of consensus items is more or less where we are. I don't know, Matt, do you think is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it hurts to put a bunch of things on there, as long as you realize too that, you know, just make sure we're realistic on them, because the things might not be, you know, taken seriously if they're just something that's going to require a massive paradigm shift in how it's done. For instance, we said that we would back off on the contiguous properties things. I think that's like one of those things where it's an onion and you're just going to keep unpeeling the layers, and all these things have to change, and it gets bigger and bigger. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
So why don't I go over this list that I wrote from what we all agreed to last time? I think the abutting properties, all that stuff, my understanding is we all are, whether we're happy about it or not, we're moving on for now.
Agreed.
Is that you agreed, Stu?
Yeah, that's okay. Yep.
Was that a, but if I recall correctly, I mean, let's be specific here. I mean, are we saying that that's a completely off the table in perpetuity, or are we saying
No.
that, you know, that's a secondary long-term objective to research and consider at a later date?
Well, yeah, I thought that's what we were talking
Yes.
about here.
Yeah.
That's I
I
understood.
think
I agree. That matter is an it's an open issue that needs some type of resolution at some point. I just think it's bigger than this committee. That's all.
Right. Maybe
Or-
it's more appropriate for the newly constituted code advisory committee.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what? Honestly, guys, even though that would require some regulatory changes, I think the best process is this code advisory allows us a lot more flexibility in how we discuss these things versus this reg review process. Okay. Just bear that in mind.
Mhm.
So even if this is something that has to require a regs change, we have that process of the code advisory that allows us this flexibility that we don't have when we do regulations. You know, we have to vet them a certain way and all this other stuff that we don't have to deal with necessarily with the code advisor, which is a good thing.
All right, long term, David, move on.
Yep, I think that's one of our, and when I said what we're gonna move forward with, meaning next year, but I think there's a few things that we want to keep rolling forward.
Mhm.
All right, so what I had was a software tracking program, for all systems in Connecticut. And then we probably need to come up with exact words to support exactly what we want of that, but then the funding aspects, we said staffing with the goal of improving project turnaround time, data collection for scientifically developing, really the regs and the program. And then C, education, training, and certification of health departments, sanitarians, installers, and designers. And then we had nitrogen sensitive area definitions, less than 50 feet to the wetlands or water course. We need the specific site, but excluding alluvial deposits. And I think we said along the coast, the CAM line is a delineating line. But again, we would look to refine that, in future revisions by concentration, nitrogen concentration, and by watershed.
So the CAM line itself is we're agreeing to it on the short term. On the long term, we're saying we need to research whether or not, there could be adjustments based on data.
Yep. And then 7,500 and 10,000 are the thresholds for nitrogen sensitive and non-nitrogen sensitive areas. And then we said technologies recognized by DEP for nitrogen credits and already in the technical standards could be used for nitrogen projects on DPH level. And Matt said he had to check on something.
Yeah, I would have to vet that with DEEP because they're the only ones ultimately that decide whether something's AT or not. And if they give us the go ahead and they can give us their results on it, I have no objection to that.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why we're hoping to say just in the technical standards is they've already done that.
No, I get it, but I mean the problem is now we're assigning an actual number to it and quantifying it. And that's, again, I'm just parroting what they've said to me in the past. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it. I just got to make sure that we can do this legitimately and legally per their interpretation, DEEP's interpretation.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're saying if the DEP has already established a nitrogen credit, one, and two, if the DPH has already included it in their technical standards.
Yep.
Therefore, that would be allowed.
I think it's a great argument. I think it's a great argument.
So there's nobody has to do too much, but I mean, absolutely. I think there's probably discussion on it, but the reason that bar was set was it should be, I mean, it's already being done today.
Yeah, no, all I'm saying to you, Dave, is years when when the soil air first came out, that was one of the things, and I think that quickly got shot down because of the reasons I said. And I just want to make sure that is looked at again to make sure that is still that now it's not an issue, and then we can move forward with it.
Yep.
So I would say, David,
like,
I mean, are you're identifying that as a short-term goal, correct?
Yeah, I think that's something that any technology, right, that has a nitrogen credit assigned to it by the DEP, and the DPH has included in their technical standards any technology that presently has that, is in that situation, that there should be allowance of use on DPH projects for nitrogen.
Yeah, I could see that as a short-term thing. I think that all I would want is something in writing from Deep, because they are currently the ones that are responsible for AT technology. So how we handled it in the past and how I would handle it now is the same thing. I would just basically write them and have them provide in writing that they've determined that this is not an AT technology. However, here is the removal properties of it. This is what we recommend that you use for removal of nitrogen. Fine, we'll just change the technical standards and allow it as approved technology. But I do need that, because ultimately,
But you're not changing the technical standards,
No, you're
right?
not. No, it's already there. These would already be ones in there. So the way I understand it is you would need a letter from the DEP that
Yes.
would say the nitrogen credit the DEP currently uses for the device, it's not an AT device, right? Whatever it is,
Yes.
in the technical standards is blank.
Yeah, but by the way,
Period.
guys, I would need to change the technical standards, because
Right.
we would need to put the numbers in there. So it would, I wouldn't have to change it as a new technology.
Right,
I would
right.
simply have to quantify and say, how much it removes and that kind of stuff. So
So-
there would need to be changes.
So then our recommendation on this should be specific or detailed in that it states that Matt gets the letter that he has, in that the technical standards are adjusted as needed to reflect, the intention.
Yeah,
Yep.
that sounds good. I would,
Sonia's got
I
her
would
hand up, David.
Yeah, put the feet to the
Oh,
fire
yeah.
to Deep to get that to us. Sorry.
My question would be the number. I'm not saying yeah or no. I actually think it's a good idea, but what is that number that's going to be used in the nitrogen calculation? Because there is in-ground passive. It's not just one product. There's in-ground passive nitrogen reduction as well. Would that also be assigned a nitrogen credit, since it's already in the technical standards used to reduce nitrogen? Those are
I
the two
think
things.
that's the intent. I think that's the intent.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you got somebody pushing right now for the Westbrook results as a sort of a pilot that actually establishes that, and they're trying to get Deep to come up with something for that. So yeah, I think that would be the way to go. We would do it for both.
We have a lot of information here in Guilford as well on systems, and I know that David does too. Just
Yeah, that's gonna require some definitely sit down discussions. That's not gonna be that easy. We all have to agree to it. So I would definitely vet that with the entire committee and make sure everyone's on board with that.
Well,
Because
you
David,
could-
don't they already have an actual number for yours though, for the soil air? Don't they have a specific number of
Soil
nitrogen?
air has a number that was agreed upon. It wasn't based on all the studies. It was just an assumed value. I think soil air was, they assume a septic tank is 20%. All right. In reality, a septic tank is less than 3%. I've never seen any study, but so these are political numbers, right? These are not scientific numbers.
And then
assume-
we can fix that too, right?
Let's just to clarify here, for one, the easy way to look at this is the soil air from the perspective of DEP gets 60% reduction total. Dave's right. They parse it in terms of 20 here, 20 there, 20 at the, in the leach field. But the bottom line is it's 60% reduction instead of 40%. And I think maybe we're making this more complex than we need to. The easiest way to do this is to incorporate it when you do your nitrogen analysis. In your nitrogen analysis, first thing that we've forgotten about that I want to make sure we do, that thing is unnecessarily difficult. Nobody should have to go through those numbers. You simply say, as part of your when a nitrogen analysis is required, the allowable discharge will be 1,635 gallons per acre, period. That's what the number works out to. Don't make, we hear the sanitarians complaining that they have all this work, they don't understand it, they're not trained. Why do we need to train them? So you take that right out of there and just say 1,635 gallons a day. And you can say, if you want, this is how we got there. Okay,
Yes, I think
that's the way to do that.
yeah.
The second part of this is if you want to incorporate allow denitrification credits for non-AT systems, you simply word it. Those systems that are already in the code and have been determined to be non-AT because they have already or they would not be in the code will be allowed the credit that DEP provides, for denitrification. And you've simply made reference to it. It's already there. There's already some backup. And, if you need some more backup, in terms of paperwork in the background, Matt, that's fine. But this way, it makes it simple. You've already got stuff established that it's in the code. And it makes it easy.
We should add that as a line item, like you said, though.
Yeah.
Add that simplification that I think you guys should add that specifically. And then also we can just define it, though, just so everybody knows where we got the number from, because I think that's important too.
So
Can we
I'm
ask
saying,
here
so
right
like-
now, is there consensus to do that?
I
It'd be
like it.
great if we,
I think it's
yeah,
great.
if we could do that, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I think that's a good idea, actually, as long as we have everything defined so it's transparent on how we got that number.
yeah. So in other words, you're going to say, you can leave it right in there the way it's written, but you can say let me just see if I get this right. You're going to say, I'm looking at a different screen here to look at how it's worded in that draft document.
Mhm.
It says simplified assessment for
Mhm.
residential buildings, blah, blah, blah. The following calculation shall be utilized. And then, this calculation assumes blah, blah, blah. Right after that line where it says this calculation assumes 60% will be treated by dilution, blah, blah, blah. You say this equation will always yield 1,635 gallons per day as the maximum effluent permitted on a site, or per acre, permitted on a site, to yield 10 milligrams a liter. Okay? So in other words,
Yeah.
you're telling them, use 1,635 gallons a day. Don't go, but you've also documented how you did it.
Yep.
Then directly underneath that, you say, for those technologies which have been determined by DEP to be non-AT and have been incorporated into the technical standards, a nitrogen credit equivalent to that which DEP would afford it may be utilized to further decrease the nitrogen, or you could alternatively say increase the gallons per acre
Allowable discharge.
allowable on the discharge.
Yep.
And you've given them the background. Look, you guys know the drill, the guys who've done the engineering stuff. This is, in that context, this is kindergarten mathematics, and I get it. And a lot of people don't have that background, so it's not. But for an engineer to back out of that and say, well, I get another 20% is, something you can do on a notepad in about 30 seconds and it's done.
And the only thing I would do, I think, Matt, would be
Yeah.
not put the actual values into the technical standards, because hopefully as we get data tracking, we can fine tune these values, right? If a value's too high or too low, we can adjust that. That shouldn't be through the technical standards.
Well, yeah, but no, put them in the technical standards, and the technical standards allows us to adjust those. So,
Yeah.
so we're upfront, transparent, and yeah, that was the beauty of this whole thing.
My suggestion would be like in an exhibit or something. All right, because if you find something's not working, you don't want to have to wait a year to change it.
Yeah, I mean, I can reword it and say, here's how this this temp, or not temp, but whatever the thing was derived, something to that effect, and just show here were the original parameters, and that way, then in the future, if we have to modify those parameters, then we do, and then that number
And you could
changes.
just say like that these parameters will be adjusted and modified from time to time as warranted by new data, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now there is one more thing that I don't know. I'm of two minds about it to bring it up again, but Mark has been harping on the upland area only for the nitrogen calculations. And it made a lot of sense to me when we were talking about getting rid of contiguous properties and everything. And I'm not really sure exactly how I feel about it, but I think I want to throw that out there. Is anybody else, we good with the regulation the way it's written, or do we want to muddy the water?
I don't think we can muddy at this point.
I don't think I'm exactly understanding what it is that you're asking.
In other words, you saw the demonstration that I worked on a couple of weeks ago. Whatever that was, a 30-acre site had half of it was wetlands. Under the model that we're talking about with Matt, the wetland area is calculated as some of the allowable area for nitrogen dilution. Now, let's be clear that is not, if you look at that and you take the negative, that glass is half empty perspective, it's not exactly true that it doesn't have any effect from two perspectives. Yes, at some point in time, there is some infiltration there, but the second point is, of course, wetlands are probably the best natural area to denitrify the effluent, so they have a very positive effect. So, it's a 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But Mark made a note of that in his email, and I just want to throw it out there and see what everybody thinks. I think it might be muddy in the water right now to go at that, but something.
My perspective would be we give it a much higher credit. Mark made the argument that we shouldn't count the wetlands. I would have the inverse. I would say there's more water flowing there for more dilution. I would also say there's more denitrification potential.
Yeah.
It's interesting how we build wetland treatment systems, right?
Yeah.
To treat nitrogen.
Well,
Yet we say, oh my God, we can't put our water anywhere near this wetland.
Well,
I mean, I think there's some logic that you'd want to put it near a wetland.
Well, bottom line is, the best analogy is we've been talking about wood chip or peat underneath a leach field as a denitrification area. What do we all think that exactly is?
Mm-hmm.
That's a wetland. You just built a wetland, a carbon source, you're right, an anoxic carbon source.
That's true.
But there's
that's
two types
exactly
too.
what it is.
There's two, the wood itself is not really the wetland, right? But there are wetland systems that are exactly, I mean, that's what they build. They had a situation on Cape Cod where they did a study. Somebody wanted to dredge out this pond. It was a big wetland area and they wanted to make it back into a pond. Somebody did the study, I forget what group. And what they found was that was the greatest denitrification system in that town. And if they pulled that wetland out and all that and dredged the pond, the water quality downstream would increase dramatically in nitrogen. So I don't think we should go there now without more study.
Well, yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking, but I wanted to bring it up so we discussed it, and didn't ignore it. But that's the good point.
Could that be a long-term review, Stu? Like one of our long-term goals?
Well, like I said, I think if we were going to mesh this whole thing up with the the no property line idea, no maximum, but just maximize the size of each individual septic system, it might make sense, because then what you're trying to do is mesh it with the way DEP does stuff, so that you're trying to synchronize the two. But here I think it's gonna muddy the water, and people are then going to be arguing, and there's going to be incentive to play games. And I wouldn't it's a lot easier to simply draw some lot lines and say, here's my area, and take advantage of it, knowing that we've discussed this and that there's knowledge beyond the prescriptive regulation, that we've considered it. And, we know that wetland actually has some denitrification effect, but we're not actually giving them credit for it.
Yeah, maybe as we go forward in the next year, we look at, I guess, there's proponents for wetland credits and there's proponents for wetland debits. So maybe we can work through that.
Yeah.
Sonia's had her hand up for a while, David.
I just wanted to say it's an excellent idea and that you guys, if we have some way to actually look at it going forward, because it is something that we see in a lot of these different trainings throughout the country. I've seen a lot about inland wetlands being used to polish off the effluent or whatever it is they call it.
Yeah.
But so many factors are out there, guys. I just
Well-
really hope we don't drop this argument because it is a good one. And I
Well,
hope that,
yeah,
Go ahead.
the biggest thing is, of course, it's a political argument. The inland wetland commissions believe that any nutrient loading to a wetland must be bad, when there's some evidence out there that it might actually be the reverse. And of
It
course,
is.
as stated in the general statutes, one of the purposes of wetlands is to renovate, right, to clean stormwater and groundwater, right? It's all about groundwater and surface water quality. That's one of their functions, but so this is why I didn't want to bring it up, because I knew it leads you down a road that's very difficult in the public health code to reconcile.
I'll echo what Sonia said. I think it's worth, it's fascinating to me, and I think it's absolutely worth review and study, and maybe something that we should say is a long-term, study that or review, either by the Code Advisory Committee or another more appropriate body. But it does seem like this is like something where we should have like UConn, is it clear, and others studying and giving us a report on, their findings. Because that, to me, sounds like, and again, it could be pro, it could be con, debits, could be credits, and but it does seem like that sort of information to be widely understood by, environmentalists and builders and developers in a whole would be really valuable. So I would love to explore that more. Might not be able to do it, this, explicitly doing it now with this working group, but certainly in the future, I think it's a worthwhile endeavor.
I think that if you look at Rhode Island, what our goal did at URI, you can see the results of those studies. It's very promising. And I think as a group, we should be looking for ways to more cost effectively treat nitrogen, help with housing costs. And we may very well find that siting these systems near the wetlands would have a very beneficial effect to the environment as a whole, protect the sound. I mean, it's always been interesting to me. Everyone recognizes the value of fertilizing a lawn, fertilizing all sorts of plants, but then all of a sudden a wetland doesn't benefit from it. I can't quite understand the logic whatsoever, but you would think that if you were taking nutrients away from the wetland, they'd be upset. So I think it definitely bears on our long-term list.
Good. You guys, is there consensus here that this concept be studied further?
Yeah, I mean, I'll even give you something. I'm just seeing how this might evolve over time. Is this actually could be something that's accepted by both DPH and DEP? Because right now we have their evaluation, which is because we have nitrogen sensitive areas on the coast that we're going to require deeps evaluation potentially, and which it allows you to go into the minutia like we are here. So that could just be part of this. So I think all of the stuff we're talking about can be incorporated in what we're trying to set up here. So I think that's a good thing.
All right, David, add it to the list. Long-term goal.
It's on mine anyway. So our long-term list, wetlands, credit or debit, or we'll call it study maybe. And we got the can line. What was the other one?
The abutting properties, right? Stu's concept.
Yeah. Just what are we gonna call that? You wanna call it abutting properties or what's a better?
Yeah, abutting properties is kind of, I understand what you mean when you say that. I think most folks do that understand the issue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's removal of, what's actually what it is a removal of the restriction on maximum gallon per day per property. we interpret it as abutting properties, but that's because of the restriction on a per property basis.
Agreed.
Yeah, that whole concept in my mind, I'm just gonna continue to harp because I'm a grouchy old guy, but yeah, that's the one that really has some bang for the buck. I mean, we're going through and we're looking at some concepts here, and I'm glad we are. But that is the one that I think has some real opportunity, some real merit in terms of reducing the amount of time and cost for an applicant. And that was my interpretation of what the statute was directing us to do. And I think that really has some merit here. The rest of this, if you think about it, in many respects, we're kind of stepping back. Some of this is additional regulation, which is running counter to what the legislation suggested. But I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's kind of what's happening here. But
Well, I think the wetland
Agreed.
setback is definitely going to improve things because, like you guys were saying, some jurisdictions had that 100 feet, 200 feet, and so that's definitely a sort of a concession. I think that's what I mean. That's less restrictive potentially.
Well, I get you, Matt. I think what it does is it may encourage them to look at it and say, okay, the Department of Health has determined that it's not a public health and environmental risk from their perspective, out when you're outside that 50 feet, but it's still not going to deter them. They're still going to go at it as a regulated activity, and we're going to have to sit through meetings, So anyway.
But we could do it where with every within 100 foot of the wetlands, you get a 10%, credit for your nitrogen removal. Within 200 foot, you get a 5%. I mean, we could do something like that, but probably not going to get it this time.
Yeah, you got Sonia's hands up.
Sonia.
Hi guys. Well, I just want to remind you guys too that the biggest things that were part of this is the 10,000 gallons per day in community systems. So by us being like, okay, these are a little more restrictive in certain areas, well, we are making a concession that yes, we will be going to 10,000 gallons per day in community systems, which from what I understand,
but we already that was last year's proposal.
Correct.
See, you're not getting anything that you didn't have last year. And the reason we're sitting here is because last year's regulation was not what was considered the optimized regulation from the perspective of, time and cost and all these other things. And this all goes back to the agenda of not only are new units needed, they're needed now. I heard the term crisis used several times in the last month or so when they signed that bill into law, and other politicians have spoken. So that's kind of, you've got to look at it. Anything that happened prior to July 1st last year, and you're going back and saying, well, okay, we're going to agree to that. That's not a step forward. That's just neutral. That's a neutral position from the perspective of what we were charged to do.
Well, there was a lot of
okay. I'm not, it sounds like at this point, we're so far down the road. A month and a half ago, I couldn't have agreed. I wasn't going to agree that it was, we weren't going to get it done, but it just time got away, and maybe it has to be a long-term goal to do some of those things. But basically, bottom line, not to be too mean, and this is a good thing for Matt, his group moves through things on and usually the town sanitarian's the same way. Things move along at a reasonable pace. A few weeks or a month isn't a big ask on big projects. A year to 18 months is absolutely ridiculous. It's just, you just can't, that would make like a good sitcom. You could make a lot of money out of saying, hey, you're going to have to wait 18 months to build a house. What? You kidding me? So anyway.
Sonia.
So,
I was just going to say again, the 10,000 gallons per day, there was also a lot of concern, like down here on the shoreline, about putting 10,000 gallons per day. So I understand what you're saying, Stu, and a lot of the things that I think are going to be figured out, like making sure we have a streamlined approach, is going to be very beneficial to developers. Time is money. Making sure these things don't go into unneeded legal battles, and making sure the developers have firm footing on where they are going and exactly what they need to do will also be something that will help with
Yeah.
cost and development.
Well, there's no question, and I guess we've from what I'm hearing, and everybody can correct me if I'm wrong. We seem to be focusing on we're going to put these in the regulations. This is all going to be part of the, the technical standards, and that's great. And I hope we can incorporate all this stuff relatively easily. But also, there is a legislative component to this. We were directed by the legislature to look at this, and I think if the legislature wants, they can direct whoever they want to do whatever they want and say, this is the way it's going to be. So this may be where some of those long-term goals end up going to them, and then they're simply going to say, okay, this is the target that we're going to hold to. I know there are many considerations, including the dreaded EPA. But anyway, that's,
Basically,
that's
a
kind of the way
roadmap
I
going
see it.
forward.
Yeah.
All right, we're good. So we're good on those recommendations. Those are short and a long term.
Yeah, I think now we just really have to kind of put pen to paper, David, and start like just fleshing these out and mocking up a draft recommendation document.
Yeah.
And I think we can put our heads together based on that list and put something, and get something in short order.
No, I think we'll take a shot at putting it together and then circulate it, make sure it represents what everybody's thinking.
Yeah, and I presume that how we structure this document will be almost like a preamble of what we were tasked to do. Then maybe almost like an executive summary of the recommendations, and then maybe with just short bullets of what those recommendations are listed as, kind of we discussed earlier, and then following that up with more detail in the document, defining what we're doing and why we're doing it, and the data or the experts that helped us along the way, like George from Rhode Island, or sorry, from Massachusetts, right? So if is everybody cool with that kind of, and obviously we'll talk about the survey done and the consensus that was achieved. We may make caveats for the purposes of the agencies that they may or may not be able to be in agreement or what have you, but that we in general had achieved consensus.
So the one other loose end I would, the other loose end I would see, I guess, looking at this whole situation. So we've got our lists of our recommendations. We talked about technologies recognized by the DEP for nitrogen credits and in the technical standards. What about technologies that are not presently recognized, not AT? All right, it seems like we should have something, right? Because what we want to do is people to come up with these ideas that help remove nitrogen, drop the cost of building in the state. So we should probably have a discussion on what would be required for that. And we should probably make that recommendation.
Well, I think you can, at least in the one easy way to do it is in that blurb where you're going to put in the nitrogen assessment regulations about AT, is to say those technologies, whatever I said, that were already recognized as non-AT by DEP and in the technical standards, or other technologies as they become such. And then you move on. They get the credit afforded to them, blah, blah, blah. That gives room for the new guy to get in and get his foot in the door.
Yep. I think we should try to carve that out because that would be helpful.
How does that process work now?
So
Well,
I
I'm thinking we should define it more clearly because it's going to be at the
Well,
DPH
yeah.
level and DEP level.
Right. So, but for for me to be able to say, let's define it further by doing X, Y, and Z, I need to
Yeah.
understand like how it's done now.
Yeah, I'll give you that information. So basically, anytime anybody wants to, this is no different than any other product per se. I know it's mostly leaching products at this point, but I'm just going to call them products that we have to approve in our office. So basically, you would just apply to us, provide the information, and in the case of a leaching system, we have a formula that we put it into. So we would have to, for the nitrogen, then we have to come up with some kind of a formula or assessment that we can consistently apply to each of these technologies as they come in. So
Matt,
I don't think that's not viable. I don't think. I mean, the way it's done now, Matt, is you go to the DEP, right? If you want to get it approved, you go to the DEP, you give them the data, and based on that data, they opine whether they think a certain credit is allowable. And unfortunately, there's not been any kind of formula that's been indicative of performance.
How about this? I got something, and I actually would support this because I'm not a big fan of formula. That's just more work for me. Okay, I just want to come up with some sort of uniform approach of how to apply these credits. How about perhaps, which we don't have, is saying you have to go to a test center and get us results, or is there some?
But you know, I would not be 100% in favor of that because a lot of times you do very well at a test center. That's why I think this bears some discussion. Right.
Okay.
Really, if you wanted to convince me, I would look at the test center results. I would look at probably George's data on his website where he's got, a bunch out there. We'll take a wood blend system. We've done, I think, 20 wood blend systems in Massachusetts, right? We had a grant to do that. You can look at the data for that, which will show you that over time, you could go to the test center and get a great result. But over 5 years, you're going to watch the concentrations increasing. So
here's what you're missing, though.
More than that.
You got to put yourself in a regulator's shoes. So you have to have something that's consistent that you can apply to everybody. What you're describing, I can appreciate that as an engineer, that to look into all of this but you got to be realistic too. So again, I think this is way more than what we need to get into right now. By the way, you and I could probably have a whole discussion on this.
I don't know. I would respectfully disagree because I think it's important to come up with a clear path forward for these technologies. That's not only clear for them, it's protective of the environment and people in Connecticut buying them.
So couldn't we in our recommendations say something like we're tasking with Deep or DPH in collaboration with Deep to come up with a formula that takes into account X, Y, and Z,
or process,
come up with an approving process or whatever.
I think the process and normally what you'd find in the process,
and then say that to be reviewed or considered by the code advisory committee, or at least reviewed by the code advisory committee, right? So for input.
Sure.
I think what you really want, you want the third party test results, right? Independent third party test results, 1. And 2, you want longer term field data. Those are the parts that most agencies consider. You can't, if you went to Massachusetts, you need 50 systems in the ground before you get an approval, right? You'd have to have the third party test data from the test center, and then you need 50 data from 50 systems.
Yeah, that sounds like a process. Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, these are the details, though. I don't think we need to come up with those right now, but this is good. I like what you're saying, and that would be in the technical standards.
We should discuss them enough that we could maybe cover it broadly in our recommendation.
Okay, what you just said, I actually like. That sounds good to me because that's somewhat of a process that can be consistently applied.
And is going to be indicative of performance, right? Long-term performance, which is what we have to.
Not theoretical. I like that. I'm tired of models and theories. I got you.
Can I ask a stupid question from a layman's, perspective? Is how do you get field data from systems that have yet to be approved? I mean, you're not allowing for pilot where is that what it is? You're just
It's
allowing
either,
for
so it's either
pilot?
gonna be other states, right? If you take Massachusetts, they'd say data from other surrounding states, right? Similar climate, makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
And, or you
Test
need to
center.
be, go through a piloting phase.
Okay,
Exactly what it is.
gotcha.
Yeah, that's somewhat new for us. I know Deep has done stuff like that in the past, but it's not to say we couldn't implement something like that.
And I think we should look at how they've done it for sure. And once we get to this point, that needs to be a consideration. Ideally, we have software that's tracking it like Massachusetts. So we could look at the DEP methodology for the past 10 years. How's it worked?
Mhm.
But we don't have it.
So, is it, can we all agree that are on here now that this is a consensus item that we can identify on our recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just an expansion of what Dave had said about these products. We're just expanding on how we go about that because we're getting into the details of establishing a process to give these credit ratings. But I think even in the short term, I'd be willing to accept what Deep has done, assuming that they,
Yeah.
you know, they've done their homework, so to speak.
Yeah, and I
Accept
don't know
what
that
Deep
we
has
can
done and
change
then,
what they're doing, right?
Right.
We're gonna accept what they're doing for now. But the
Right.
other thought is somebody might come to you,
Yeah,
and then how would that be done? Yeah, I mean, I
correct.
guess we could punt and say, well, send it to Deep for
Sure.
now. But
Yeah,
ideally, at some point, you could have something clearly defined that would encourage people to come to you.
yeah. Or we can just collaborate with Deep on this and come up with a consistent way that we both agree with. So that's probably where I would prefer that the most. Again, you got to understand. I mean, myself and our team doesn't have that much experience with AT technology, so we're kind of a little green. So I would like to have their input, Deep's input.
So the
Well, and
recommendation
that's,
again would be, DPH with collaboration from Deep would come
Yes.
up with
I-
a process that
Mhm.
includes third party results and field data
Yeah,
to allow for new non-AT systems
right.
and
The
And Jim,
crediting,
I would
and
the
say-
crediting.
the credit
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
new non-AT systems.
I would say that's exactly what the newly formed code advisory committee should do. Work with both agencies. I don't know that right? You
Yeah.
want to
Well, they
bring,
are invited. You're right. They are invited to the code advisory, but again, it goes back to participation, guys. I think we need to do a big overhaul on participation. Perhaps this is going to motivate people moving forward. But yes, they come to the meetings, so we would just have to be very specific and attendance and really push people to come and to provide the feedback. That's the other thing that's been difficult is getting the feedback.
so
It's usually go
I
ahead.
don't know if it's our committee or it's Sonia's committee, but is one of the recommendations going to be to have it more like the building and codes group, how that's done? Is that
A lot.
where
Yeah,
we are?
Sonia has her hands up if you want to.
Sonia?
It's fine.
So I'm looking at all the surveys, guys, and one of the things that we're going to be doing is what's consensus. What do we have the majority of? And on that particular question, at first was kind of like in the middle, but it definitely shows that the majority of the group does think that we need something more towards the codes and standards. I don't want to blow up my spot for next meeting. I have at 2:00 if any of you are coming. But as far as whether it's going to happen or not, I don't know. That's going to be more of a DPH DP after what's going to happen afterwards. But as far as the actual regs and legal subcommittee and even every participant on that's actually provided a survey, the majority of you guys think yes, the codes and standards such as what DAS has been set up is not only good for AT, that's like a big stressor. Everyone's like, yes, on the AT, but should it be for right now? And the most, again, I don't want to blow up the spot, but most of the survey did say consensus is that, yeah, we should have something similar in nature. Sorry.
Yeah, and then this would be a logical place to have involvement.
Mhm.
So is that something we want to put forth? So just a methodology. We'll say right now it's through DEP and then, you know, to be, redefined going forward.
I would say through DPH with collaboration from Deep, and the codes, you know, the code advisory committee in whatever shape that takes moving forward.
Got it.
I think Bradford,
What about?
19 South Cove Road.
Yeah.
He said he texted you last week. He's wondering, did we do the septic?
David, remind me what we were looking for a citation of the inland wetland statutes. What was that for specifically?
For the 50-foot, well, just to, how to refer to wetlands and water courses.
Okay,
I thought.
so I mean, so okay, and just for clarification, if you're looking just for where the definitions are identified in statute for inland wetlands and all the definitions pertaining to inland wetlands, that's under section it's under section 22A-37.
Yeah.
Exclusive of alluvial soils.
Now, if you're looking for like wetland boundaries and permitting procedures and notice and hearing requirements, that's section 22A-42A. And it might be that we want to cite both those.
I just want to say I gotta leave, guys. I'm sorry, I have another meeting.
Mm.
I'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah.
That's on it.
How you did that, because I didn't receive any text.
All right, so I guess we're at other business.
Is there any?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm good as well. So I mean, I think our next step is to really kind of put pen to paper and start a draft recommendation document.
Yep.
David, I mean, obviously that's going to take a little bit of work on on my behalf and your behalf.
Okay.
So you and I should
Yes.
kind of circle back very, very soon to start kind of putting the framework of that together.
Agreed.
All right, and as soon as we have something, we'll hand it off to Peter to share with the rest of the group. You know, we're at January 21 today. You know, obviously the goal would be for us to wrap up in 10 days prior to or within 10 days, preferably earlier. So that you know the working group can have its kind of document ready to go by you know, January 31st. I don't know if in reality we're going to need a week or two longer for you know the entire working group to conclude its business, but that's where we're at right now. So I would suggest that we put another meeting on the books for this subcommittee to review, you know, the document that David and I put together. And
hopefully we can email that around or however that's done.
yeah,
So,
no, we could certainly
yeah,
email it
I
around,
think-
but I do think that we'll ultimately need like one more meeting in person to all talk about it, right? I think that makes sense. And we could do it like a week from today, or I mean, obviously it depends on how quickly we can turn around this document.
Sounds good.
So are you guys comfortable with us just like scheduling a meeting on the fly, or do you want us to kind of put something on the calendar right now? Might make sense to put something, you know, since we have Peter here with us, David, to maybe throw out a couple of dates right now and just figure it out. So, I mean, to give us the most amount of time, my challenge is I'm going to be out of state from the 15th to the 20th of, oh wait, so that doesn't matter. That's the next month. Do we want to say, like, you know, to give us the most time, and then it gives the larger working group a week? Say like Friday the 23rd, would that be a possibility for folks?
I mean,
Yeah, I can do that.
Let me see my.
I mean, that's this
Well, that's
Friday.
day
that's
after
Friday,
tomorrow.
that's
Yeah,
not,
yeah,
yeah,
no,
that ain't gonna
we're-
happen by me.
You're talking
Yeah.
about the 30th.
Yeah, I was talking about the 30th. I apologize.
How about the 30th bad, how about the 29th?
So
Yeah. Let me see the 29th for me.
I'm gonna be, out bouncing around most of next week, but I'll try and get in on it. You
I mean,
guys
a
just
lot of it's
schedule when
gonna-
you can.
I mean, hopefully we're got it to a point where you can look at a fairly simple document, right, one
Right.
page or so, and edit it too.
Sure.
Yeah. I have, let me see. I have a 10 o'clock. I mean, you guys could start. I think that it's actually a very short meeting with some legislators. It's only going to last like 20 minutes. And you guys could get started at 10 if you wanted to, or we could start at like 10:30 on the 29th.
I mean, I
You know-
have a 10 o'clock too as well.
Yeah.
So
Does your 10 o'clock go like the entire hour, or is it?
I mean, I really have two back-to-back meetings from 10 to noon, but I mean, I can,
Afternoon works for me too. I don't know if that's.
yeah, it would work for me. And I don't know. Yeah, afternoon probably be best, like early afternoon, 1 o'clock or something like that would be great for me.
What about you? What about everyone else? 29th at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm almost
Yeah.
sure that I'm not gonna be able to make it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week. I could take a look at the documents at night,
Just
I
provide
think.
feedback.
It depends where I am. I'm gonna be on a trip bouncing around, so.
Okay. David?
The earlier the better for me. I got something starting at 3.
So we could do 1 o'clock. That would work.
Yeah, I got, if we gotta do it, let's do that. And if we can all agree on the document, I'm happy not to have a meeting.
Yeah. Let's just put it on the books, and maybe we can do, as soon as David and I have something, we'll have Peter add it to the OneDrive, and we'll notify everybody. If we can actually do this without the meeting, that's fine. But let's have the meeting on the books, and see what we can do about canceling it if we all do our work ahead of time.
Can we do it at 12:30? Is that too tight for you guys?
It works for me. Matt's.
I could do 12:30.
Okay.
That'd be awesome. That would help me.
How about you, Greg? Are you cool with? Okay, good. Peter, would 12:30 on the 29th work for your scheduling purposes? It does. All right, great. So I presume Peter will send out an email, and I assume we just need that for an hour. We don't need a 2-hour meeting, because again, we'll all have looked at this document.
Agreed. Yeah.
All right. Then I think we're good, David.
All right.
And I'll give you a call, David, sometime this afternoon, or you can give me a call whenever you're available, and we can kind of start talking about that framework.
Okay, that sounds good.
Adjourned?
So thank you, everybody. So we'll hopefully turn this around to you, and you could just redline it and we're done.
All right.
All right,
I
guys.
think today's been a great meeting. It's been really productive. So thanks, everybody.
I agree.
We'll talk
Take
soon.
care.